It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, a day filled with love, laughter, and family, but instead, it became the day everything changed. My name is Maria, and this is the story of how my life was turned upside down the moment my husband stopped me from going to my brother's wedding. From the outside, it seemed like a simple family gathering, a celebration of love. But for me, it became a battle of emotions, control, and betrayal. My brother's wedding was one of the most important days of my life, not just because of the occasion, but because it symbolized everything I held dear. The memories, the bond, the love we shared, they were all tied to this day. And yet, in the blink of an eye, my husband tried to rip that away from me. I never imagined something like this would happen, and even when it started, I thought it was a joke. A cruel joke, yes, but a joke nonetheless. But then, reality set in. As the wedding day approached, the tension between my husband and me grew. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Was it the stress? Was it jealousy? Or something deeper? I couldn't tell. All I knew was that I had to be there. For my brother. For myself. But little did I know that the battle I was about to face would change everything. He was never like this. He always supported my family, always encouraged me to be close with them. But this time, something was different. The subtle comments, the change in his tone, the way he'd look at me when I talked about my brother's wedding, it wasn't just about the event itself. It was like he was trying to pull me away from the people I loved most. At first, I brushed it off. After all, we all have our moods, right? Maybe he was stressed from work. Maybe he was just tired. But as the days passed, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The little jabs, the cold silence when I mentioned the wedding, they all pointed to something much darker. I couldn't deny it anymore. Something was wrong. Maria, don't you think you should focus more on us? Your brother can have his wedding, but we have our life together, he said one evening. I remember the exact words, the way he said them, the chill in his voice. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal, that he was just overreacting. But deep down, I felt the weight of his words. My mind raced. My heart felt heavy. I knew this wasn't just about the wedding. He wasn't just being overprotective or worried. He was trying to isolate me, to make me feel guilty for caring about my own family. And with every passing day, it was starting to feel like he wanted to control me. Was I overthinking it, or was I seeing something I didn't want to? I didn't know, but the nagging feeling inside me wouldn't go away. It was like a dark cloud following me around. The closer the wedding got, the stronger the tension between us grew. It wasn't just the wedding anymore. It was about everything that had been building up over time, all the things I had ignored, all the red flags I had dismissed. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment when everything came to light. The moment I couldn't ignore it any longer. I wasn't just fighting for my place at my brother's wedding. I was fighting for my freedom, for my own voice, for the right to be who I was, without fear of being controlled. And yet, every time I tried to speak up, I felt like I was walking on thin ice. Then, the moment I had dreaded happened. He flat out told me I couldn't go. His eyes were cold, his voice harsh. There was no reasoning with him, no pleading. It was as if the man I loved had completely disappeared. "You're not going," he said, and the finality in his voice sent a chill through my bones. I stared at him in shock, unable to process what he had just said. This wasn't the man I knew. This wasn't the man who had always been kind, who had shared my joy, my love for my family. This was someone else, someone I didn't recognize. I had expected a little argument, some hesitation maybe, but never this. Never a demand. Never a line drawn so clearly in the sand. "What do you mean I can't go?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You're not going. End of story." I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. "But it's my brother's wedding. It's important to me," I pleaded, my voice shaking. But his eyes remained cold, unyielding. "I don't care," he said, and that was it. There were no more words, no more explanations, just a command that left me speechless. The anger, the confusion, the hurt all collided inside me, but all I could do was stand there, stunned. My brother was waiting for me. He needed me there, and yet, here I was, trapped in a house with a man I barely recognized, a man who seemed determined to take everything from me. I was paralyzed with disbelief. This couldn't be happening. I never imagined my own husband would do something like this, something so cruel. The man who had promised to love me, support me, had become someone I feared. I could feel the walls closing in on me, suffocating me. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about control. It was about a power struggle that I had never seen coming. My entire life was crumbling in front of me, and I was powerless to stop it. "You're being unreasonable," I said, trying to regain some control of the situation. "I don't care," he repeated, his voice stone cold. "This is not about your family, Maria. This is about us. You're mine, and you will stay here with me." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The words echoed in my mind, "You're mine." He wasn't talking about love anymore. He was talking about possession, and in that moment, everything became painfully clear. This wasn't a partnership. This wasn't a marriage built on love and respect. This was control. I was nothing more than an object to him. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This was the man I had married, and this was what he had become. I needed answers. I confronted him, demanding to know why. His response wasn't what I expected. He didn't apologize. He didn't show any remorse. Instead, he said something that shook me to my core. "You don't need your family. You have me." I wanted to scream, to break down right then and there, but I couldn't. I was numb. His words cut through me like a blade. How could he say that? How could he try to erase the people who had been there for me when I had nothing? My family was everything to me, and now he was trying to take them away. I felt like I was suffocating, like I was losing myself piece by piece. I stood there, speechless, as he continued, "You don't need them, Maria. You're mine, and that should be enough." His eyes, once full of love, were now hard and unyielding. It was like he was speaking to a stranger, not his wife. "But they're my family. They mean everything to me. You can't just control who I see, who I love," I protested, my voice shaking with emotion. His gaze softened for a moment, but the underlying menace was still there. "You think they love you the way I do? You think they'd choose you over their own lives? No, Maria, I'm the only one who will truly be there for you." His words twisted in my mind. Was this love? Or was it something darker? Was this his way of showing how much he cared? Or was it just an attempt to break me down, to make me feel like I couldn't exist without him? The thought of it made my stomach churn. I had always thought of us as a team, a partnership. But now I was beginning to see the truth that I had been blind to for so long. This wasn't a marriage of equals. This was about control. He wasn't just trying to stop me from attending a wedding. He was trying to stop me from being me. I started questioning everything. Was I wrong to want to be there for my family? Was I wrong to have a life outside of our relationship? The uncertainty ate away at me. The trust I had in him, the love I had once felt, started to fade, replaced by a deep sense of betrayal. I didn't know who this man was anymore. I didn't know how I could share my life with someone who was trying to take away the very things that made me whole. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that something was deeply broken in our relationship. But was it too late to fix? The choice seemed impossible. On one hand, I had a life with him, but on the other, I had my brother, my family, my roots. The truth was, I didn't recognize the man in front of me anymore. The love I once saw in his eyes had turned into something unfamiliar, something cold and possessive. I didn't know who he was anymore. And more importantly, I didn't know who I was in this marriage. What had started as a partnership, a beautiful union, had now become a battle for control. And it wasn't just a battle for power, it was a battle for my own identity. My mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. How could I choose between my family and my husband? It seemed impossible. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized something important. I had already made my choice. I didn't need his permission to go to my brother's wedding. I didn't need his approval to love my family. I wasn't going to let him dictate who I could be or where I could be. But even as the realization hit me, fear gnawed at the edges of my resolve. What would happen if I went? What would it mean for my marriage? Could I really leave this controlling man, even if he was the one who had changed everything? A wave of guilt washed over me. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to tear apart our life together. But in the back of my mind, I knew that if I stayed, I would lose myself. I would lose everything I had ever stood for. And that was something I wasn't willing to sacrifice. "Maria?" he said, his voice now soft, almost pleading. "You don't have to do this. You don't need them. I'm all you need." I could see the desperation in his eyes, but I wasn't buying it anymore. His words were empty. They had no power over me anymore. "No," I said firmly, my voice steady for the first time in days. "I'm going." The finality in my voice shocked both of us. There was no turning back now. He stared at me for a long time, his face contorting with anger, confusion, and maybe even a hint of regret. But there was no apology. No change. Just a silence that filled the room like a heavy weight. "You'll regret this," he finally muttered, his voice thick with bitterness. "You'll see." But I didn't care anymore. The decision was made. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of freedom. I wasn't going to be controlled. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel small or insignificant. I was going to my brother's wedding, and nothing, not even him, could stop me. After I made my decision, everything seemed to happen in a blur. The tension between us was unbearable, but I knew deep down I had done the right thing. As I packed my bags, preparing to leave for my brother's wedding, I could feel my heart racing with both fear and excitement. There was no turning back now. I wasn't sure what would happen when I returned. Would my marriage be over? Would he even want me back after what I had done? But I couldn't let fear hold me back. I had to do this for myself, for my own sanity. The drive to my brother's wedding was quiet, but in my mind, it felt like a roar. I was no longer just Maria, the wife. I was Maria, the woman who refused to be controlled. When I arrived at the wedding, the sense of relief was overwhelming. My brother, his bride, and the rest of my family welcomed me with open arms. I hadn't realized how much I missed them, how much I had been denying myself. The joy, the laughter, the love that surrounded me. It reminded me of who I was. I didn't need to be someone's possession. I was whole on my own. But even as I stood there, surrounded by love and warmth, a small part of me couldn't shake the guilt. I kept wondering if I had made the right choice. Was this the end of my marriage? Was this the last time I would see him? Those questions lingered in my mind, unanswered. The wedding was beautiful, and I couldn't help but smile, seeing my brother so happy. But even in the midst of the celebration, my thoughts kept drifting back to him. What had he been thinking when I left? Was he truly that heartless? Or was there something deeper, something that had changed him? As the night drew to a close and I prepared to leave, I realized something important. I had learned a powerful lesson that day. Love wasn't supposed to feel like a cage. It wasn't supposed to make me feel small, insignificant, or controlled. True love is about freedom, the freedom to be who you are, the freedom to make your own choices, and the freedom to live a life without fear. The truth was, I had been living in fear for so long, not just of my husband, but of the idea of losing him. But now I knew that I couldn't lose myself in the process. When I returned home, I wasn't sure what the future held. I didn't know if my marriage could be repaired. But I was ready to face whatever came my way, because for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. But what happens next? Was this the breaking point for my marriage? Or was it only the beginning of something much darker? The question hung in the air as I returned home, uncertain and unsure of the future. Walking through the door felt like stepping into a war zone. The house, once a place of comfort and love, now felt like a cold, empty space. My husband was sitting in the living room, waiting. His expression was unreadable, and the tension between us was thick. He didn't speak when I walked in. There were no words of apology, no recognition of what had happened. Just silence. "You're back," he said finally, his voice almost mechanical. "I didn't think you'd come back." His words hit me harder than I had expected. I wasn't sure if he was relieved or angry. Maybe it was both. I stood there, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to ask him why, to understand what had led him to this point, but the other part of me already knew the answer. The control, the possessiveness. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about him wanting to define who I was, and I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. "I had to go," I said, my voice firm. "I had to be with my family. I had to live for me, not for you, not for anyone else." His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Regret? Anger? Or maybe both. But there was something else there too. Fear. Fear that I was slipping away from him, slipping away from everything we had built, and that fear, I realized, was his weakness. I had always been afraid of losing him, but in that moment I saw the truth. He was afraid of losing me. "You think you're in control, but you're not," I added, my voice steady. "I'm not yours to control. I never was." The words felt like a final declaration, an end to the silence, to the fear. I had finally found my voice. He didn't respond. He just stared at me, as if processing everything I had said, but I could see the shift in his eyes, the realization that I wasn't the same woman anymore. The woman who would do anything to keep the peace. The woman who would give up her own dreams and desires to please him. That woman was gone. The silence between us stretched on, but this time it was different. It was the silence of something broken, something irrevocably changed. But what was next for us? Would this be the end of our marriage? Or was this just the beginning of something new? Something neither of us was ready for? As I stood there waiting for his next move, I realized that I couldn't control what he would do next. I couldn't control the future. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally in control of myself. As the days passed after that tense confrontation, I found myself in a state of quiet reflection. The choice I had made, to stand up for myself, to go to my brother's wedding, to reject the control that had started to creep into my life, wasn't easy. There was still so much uncertainty about what lay ahead. But one thing was clear. I couldn't live a life where I was afraid of my own voice, where I was afraid to stand up for what mattered to me. I had to face the consequences of my actions, no matter how painful or difficult it might be. When I returned home that night, the air between my husband and me was still thick with unresolved tension. He didn't speak much, but I could feel the weight of his thoughts hanging between us. Would we make it through this? Would our marriage survive? I didn't know. I couldn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't lose myself in the process. I couldn't keep sacrificing who I was just to maintain a relationship that no longer felt healthy. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I thought about the future. Would things ever be the same? Could they be? I thought about the woman I had been before all of this, a woman who had been afraid, who had let herself be controlled, who had let fear dictate her actions. And I realized something important. I had changed. I was no longer that woman. I didn't know what the future held for me and my husband, but I knew this. I had found my strength. I had found my voice, and no matter what happened next, I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was for sure, I was ready to face it, with or without him. I had learned that love wasn't about control, it wasn't about possession, it was about freedom. The freedom to be who you are, to follow your own path, and to love without fear. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that freedom. Whatever came next, I was ready. As I reflect on everything that's happened, I want to share this with you. No matter what you're going through, no matter the challenges in your relationship or your personal life, you have the strength to stand up for yourself. Don't let fear, control, or manipulation silence your voice. You deserve to live a life that's true to who you are. If you're in a situation that feels suffocating or wrong, remember, you're not alone. It's never too late to make a change, to reclaim your life, to choose you. If you're someone who's struggling with similar issues, I encourage you to speak up, seek support, and take the steps toward freedom and self-respect. Your voice matters. Your happiness matters. Don't let anyone take that away from you. If this story resonated with you, if it spoke to something inside of you, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to make a hard choice? How did you handle it? Share your experiences. Let's create a space where we can support each other and empower one another. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear this message today. Together we can remind ourselves that we deserve happiness, respect, and love on our own terms. Thank you for watching. You're stronger than you think. Never forget that.